Howdy everybody, and welcome back to our GameMaker Studio 2 Fundamentals course. And today we're going to be talking about those events that I talked about last time. So we have a bunch of different events that are available for an object, and each one of these events is activated in step. So that means they have a certain order that they act in. So the very first thing that happens with an object is the create of code. And then you would have stuff like your begin step, then end step, and then you would have stuff like your draw begin, draw end, then your draw GUI begin, draw GUI end, and so on and so forth. So there's a certain order for how all these things go, and you can figure out what it is. There's a help file that actually describes what the order is. So just pull that up whenever you need it. But for the most part, the most important things for us will be the create event, then the step events, and probably the draw events. We also have a destroy event. So if we tell our object to destroy itself, so if we get killed in the game, then this will run specific code like create an explosion effect at our player's position when he dies, and cleanup as well, which kind of works in tandem with the destroy event to remove, where you would put stuff specifically like if you wanted to for memory management, if you have there's grids and stuff that can be created later on that need to be cleaned up when the player or whatever object you just destroyed dies, and you'll have to you'll be putting them into this cleanup event to make sure they actually get removed there. And the step event, like I said, is where each one of our is where the code that happens every single frame actually happens. So if we come into the step event, again, it looks exactly the same as all the other ones, but every single frame of the game, this stuff will actually happen. So if we wanted to say, make our, well, you remember how I made the sprite move, when I had the sprite as a background, it marched across the room. So if we just do x plus equal 1, that would do the exact same thing for this object. It would cause it to march across the room, one pixel every frame. So that is what you would do. Everything that would go frame by frame would be over there. Create only happens once when the object is created. So you would declare variables and such in there so that they don't give you undeclared variable errors. We also have stuff like alarms, which are basically built-in timers, so you could go give it whatever value you want. So if you give it 60 as your value, then every step it'll count down. So it would be 59, 58, 57, so on and so forth. And once it reaches 0, it'll execute the code that is inside of the alarm. So whatever code that you put inside the alarm will be done when it reaches 0. Then it'll return to -1, which is the off value for the alarm. Then, of course, we have the draws, which are affect if our character actually gets drawn to the screen directly. So it's kind of like the visible, but it's where we have all of our code for whether or not our player gets drawn or not. So if we add a draw event, we have to remember to add a little bit of code, draw self, otherwise our character won't draw. So let's delete that event. We don't want it there right now. Then we have mouse events, which allow us to, if we have left down or left pressed or left released, or if the mouse enters the hitbox of our object, or if the mouse wheel is moved up or down. And these are all stuff that would happen when the mouse is on the object. But we also have the global, which are pretty much the same thing, except if the mouse is clicked anywhere or anything, then it would activate these events. Key down, which is again pretty much exactly the same thing, except this is for the keyboard. So if we press the left button, if the left button is down, then it will do stuff. If the left button has been pressed, then it'll do stuff. If it's been released, then it'll do stuff. Gestures are for if you're working on mobile stuff. and collisions. If your object touches another object, then do this stuff. Then we have stuff like the outside of room. So if your object goes outside of the room, you can destroy it because you don't want it to fall forever. And intersect boundary, which I have actually never used, but I believe it's, again, if you touch something. And game start, game end, room start, room end. Animation end would be like if once you reach the end of your animation loop for your sprite, then it will do this. And every time a new frame starts on the animation event, do this. Paths end, and then user event. User events are just a bunch of code that activates on demand, which is usually demanded from the step event. And these will actually be more useful later. These will be fairly useful later on. Then we have asynchronous events, which are things that happen in the background, kind of. So we can, when something calls it, then it will actually activate the event. So if we had an HTTP request, then the game would wait around until it received a callback for this, and then it would activate your HTTP request, or it would wait until your image is loaded before you would actually activate this event, and a bunch of other things. So we'll just ignore those because you probably won't need them for a while. All right, I think that's enough about events, and you know a little bit more about where they come from and where they go, and whether or not to name Cotton Eye Joe. So thank you very much for watching, everybody, and good luck with your programming.